I had already been threatened with a dismissal the year before, after I had taken part in some civil disobedience demonstrations, in particular in Germany. At that point, they told me that they would not tolerate my further involvement with the civil disobedience. They tolerate protests, but only within the boundary of the law. And of course, the essential point of civil disobedience is that you go beyond the law. So you breach the law precisely because you want to show that the situation is so serious, is so bad that you have to do something to show that, as again, Antonio Guterres says, the real criminals are not doing this minor infringement of the law, but are those who are continuing with burning fossil fuels. That could have been part of the reason why they took this strong stance against me. And I said, no, I don't want to lose my dignity in the end. I don't want to bend myself to this act of submission. I disobey.
Hello and welcome to Planet Critical, the podcast for a world in crisis. My name is Rachel Donald. I'm a climate corruption journalist and your host. Every week I interview experts who are battling to save our planet. My guests are scientists, politicians, academics, journalists, and activists. They explain the complexities of the energy, economic, political, and cultural crises we face today, revealing what's really going on and what they think needs to be done. These are the stories of the big picture. Go to planetcritical.com to learn more and subscribe. My guest this week is Gianluca Grimalda. Gianluca is a climate change researcher who was fired from his institute for refusing to fly back from his fieldwork. Gianluca had been what he describes as a slow traveller for a decade, and Kiel Institute had previously supported his decision not to fly, allowing him to take travel days as work days, as he voyaged by rail, bus, and ferry to reach far-flung destinations, including Bougainville in Papua New Guinea. However, last year, when his field work overran by 2 months, the Institute demanded that he be back in Germany within 5 days. Gianluca refused, and he was fired. He joins me today to tell that story. The moral clarity he felt around the decision to lose his job by doing the right thing, the ongoing fight that he is having with the Institute, and why he doesn't consider himself a hero. The first half of the episode, however, is on his really fascinating research about how vulnerable communities in Papua New Guinea are responding to climate change. The awareness of climate change in those communities, the role of fatalism and optimism in decision-making, and, anecdotally, the prevalence of dangerous psychological attributes in our leaders. Gianluca was in the final days of writing his book when I spoke to him, and as I say in the episode, this is the kind of story that we need to broadcast. People doing the right thing, and a wider community rallying around them to support them in that mission. I hope you all enjoy the episode. If you do, please share it far and wide. And if you're loving the show, become a patron on Patreon or support Planet Critical with a paid subscription at planetcritical.com. By signing up, you'll get the Planet Critical newsletter inspired by each episode delivered straight to your inbox every week. You'll also have access to the wonderful Planet Critical community who are full of inspiring thoughts, ideas, critiques, and determination. The links are in the description box below. I'm so grateful to everyone who chooses to support the project. I'm a vehement believer in ad-free and open access content, so Planet Critical wouldn't exist without the direct support of the amazing community. Thank you so much to all of you who believe in Planet Critical and keep the project going every week. Gianluca, thank you so much for joining me on Planet Critical. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You have quite an extraordinary story that I'm really delighted we're going to get into today. But before we do, you have to answer the first question that everybody gets, which is, why is the world in crisis?
Why is the world in crisis? I would say the one reason is that we as a species have been incredibly successful. So that's the main reason. So we have invented agriculture, which has kind of stabilized our food supply. We have domesticated animals, and then we have discovered this immensely efficient technology, which is burning fossil fuel. As James Hansen says, inside 1 liter of fossil fuel, there is the equivalent of the work of 13 adults working 1 day. So it's incredibly efficient. But of course, this has come at a huge cost. And the cost is greenhouse gases. So as James Hansen would say, this is a Faustian bargain that we have now that we have to pay. We have managed to increase our life expectancy from 27 years before the Industrial Revolution up to 73 years. The human population has increased tenfold since before the Industrial Revolution up to now. The working week has decreased from about 63 hours in Germany at the end of the 19th century down to about 30 hours now, and it's the same in other countries. We have been incredibly successful, and I think technology was not the only answer, as evolutionary biologists would say. Our ability to cooperate also mattered a lot, but unfortunately, we are quite good at cooperating at the local level, and then over the past centuries at the national level as well, but not at the global not yet. At the global level. So, so as the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, always says, we have developed this addiction to fossil fuels, and now we have to get rid of this addiction, and it's not easy. So some people say that this problem of cooperation, of global cooperation, is the most difficult that we have ever faced, and I think they are right. So first of all, we should not think that it's easy. And what can we do about it? So we have to get rid of this addition. And so I think the first point is to recognize that this is an addiction, that we have to get rid of it. So we have to recognize that it's something bad. So burning fossil fuels, cutting down our forests, and continuing with an unsustainable eating style, food habits is bad. And I think we have not got to that point yet. So according to some international surveys that have been recently conducted, pretty much everyone in the world has realized that the climate is changing. So close to 90% of the people say that. But then when it comes to the underlying causes, many people haven't got the link right between burning fossil fuels and increasing temperature. So only 1/3 of the people answering these questions says that the human-made is mostly man-made. And I mean, actually, this is quite telling, because even the researchers who set up these surveys, even them, did not put in the survey the correct answer. And the correct answer is that 100% of climate change is human-made. Actually, it's even more than 100%, because all the other natural factors like sun rays, aerosols, ozone layer, actually, they had overall a cooling effect. So more than 100% of climate change has been entirely due to human activity, but this option is not even included in the survey. So this is quite telling that even researchers who are not climate scientists, even then, don't appear to know the correct answer. But even leaving this aside, a lot of people think that what we are experiencing is a natural cycle, natural evolution of the climate, which is absolutely not the case. And so I think that's the first thing that we should do, increase awareness. So I think we are not there yet. And the second thing is to undermine the power of the elite that is basically keeping most of the world population in ignorance. So there is an incredible, I would say, censorship about climate issues. So most of us media, the press, don't report the situation as it really is. So it doesn't really give the possibility to the global population to really cooperate with each other. And so I think that's the second main aspect. And I think ideally, when the world population acquires knowledge and awareness, we can really think of doing, I mean, maybe not revolutionary things, but things that are feasible, like taxing the rich and curbing the obscene consumption patterns that the very wealthy in the world still have. And I think something is moving, but very, very slowly. So there has been just in these days an appeal by two ex-Nobel Prizes in economics, Joseph Stiglitz and Esther Duflo, about basically taxing the rich, implementing a form of taxation on the super wealthy in the world. Thomas Piketty is also supporting that. Thomas Piketty also proposes the institution of a universal basic income. Personally, in my past work, I also supported the idea of a global universal basic income. It sounds so utopian, but I think financially and also institutionally, we are getting closer to this possibility. And I think that would also, this universal basic income would also have the capability of basically creating an automatic safety net that when a climate crisis comes about would automatically protect people all around the world. So yeah, basically this is my short answer to your first question.
Thank you. Very comprehensive indeed. I just want to ask, where was that survey that did not include the 100% of climate change is man-made?
Actually, there are two that basically make the same mistake. So one comes from a group at Yale University. I think it's called the Climate Change Communication Research, and they used the data from Facebook. And they conducted this survey with Facebook users all around the world. And yeah, even then they have it as options. Most of climate change is human-made, and then it's equally human-made and due to natural cycles. And then the second survey has not been yet published. It's only a working paper. And it has been made by the group of Stephanie Stancheva at Harvard University. And I mean, credit to them because they have at least started thinking about asking people around the world what they think, how they position themselves with respect to climate change. But to me, that's a glaring, I would say, mistake that they did not include the one option that is really correct.
Oh, thank you very much for that. It's quite glaring mistake, quite frightening, I think, as well. That was a really, really, really good answer. I agree with so much of it. And I suppose, actually, before we go into the story, which is why I originally contacted you, of what happened with the institution you worked with, I would be curious to speak a little bit more about the results that you got from the communities that you were surveying in Papua New Guinea, in Bougainville. What is their response to, first of all, what's happening to their communities? I think people would be very surprised to understand how much the sea levels have already risen there. How are they responding to it? How did they respond to the data that you presented them with? And what are they hoping for on a local, regional, national, and international level?
Yes. This is another question that could take hours to respond. But yeah, first of all, a little bit of an anticlimax. I haven't analyzed the data, so I cannot give you the full answer yet. But something has emerged. And first of all, what I witnessed with my eyes is that pretty much all the coastal communities have already experienced forced migration, basically because they used to live in areas that are already submerged by the sea. And to be fair, this is not entirely due to climate change. So there is also an aspect of tectonic movements. So the land is sinking. I think this second factor actually counts for 4 times as much as a sea level rise proper. But still, it's adaptation to natural phenomenon that is not easy yet. And so, of course, when this happens, when sea level rise happens, this makes it more frequent that what they call king tides, so basically surge storms and very high tides are more and more destructive, and sometimes people die. Most of the times they just lose their infrastructures, their properties. But it's not so life-threatening. What really scares me is that they are experiencing temperature rise, and with that increased drought. So pretty much everyone in Bougainville told me that the so-called dry season, which is a period of complete lack of rain, would normally last 3 weeks in the past, and it now lasts 6 weeks. And
wow.
I think we have not yet got to the point that this brings about famine. But some communities have already told me that when this happens, they have no food. So this has not happened in every community I went to, but some communities tell me that. And so they manage to get about this with the networks of reciprocity, of mutual solidarity. So when an entire community lacks food, so then they would rely on people living in other places, and that they would get food. But the problem is that when droughts and these periods of lack of water affects many communities, so they would not be able to rely on that. So this is the situation. So this would be the perfect moment in which they should adapt. So they should switch their main cash crops from what they have now to something that is more resistant to water scarcity. So probably they should leave behind the sweet potatoes, that is their traditional food. They should switch to tapioca, but they're still not doing it. And I would say that one of the things that I tried to study when I was there was really how much fatalism, so this idea that the future is predetermined, affects also adaptation to climate change. And this was one of the questions in my questionnaire. So how much do you believe that basically the future is in your hands, or how much do you believe that everything is already written? So there is basically nothing that you can do and nothing that humanity can do about that. And 80% of the respondents said that there is nothing we can do about climate change. 80%.
Wow.
And we also, I do what is called the experimental economics. So we try to basically, we give people money and we see what they do with that money. So that's controversial for some anthropologists, but I think it's a very effective way to really see how people would behave when really material incentives matter. And in one of the things that we did, in one of the experiments we did, we wanted to see how much people are willing to basically insure against risks. So we give them a lottery, a gamble, if you like, in which they have some money and they are going to lose this money with some probability, with relatively high probability, or basically they can buy an insurance. So they can have a safe income, a safe option without any risk. But of course, they have to pay for that insurance. And the degree to which people prefer the gamble rather than the insurance is astonishing. So there were a series of 3 gambles. In the last gamble, they would have only 3% probability of winning, let's say, 50 kina, which is the equivalent of 2 days of work, rather than earning 25 kina, half of that, with certainty. And I think very few people would take the gamble, because it's, according to every kind of financial computation that you can do, receiving 25 kina with the certainty is much more convenient than participating in the gamble. Instead, as many as 70% of the people still decided to go for the gamble. And we also wanted to study how much people were prepared to adapt or mitigate collective risks or do nothing. So we had another experiment in which people were given the possibility of choosing between 3 different options. Again, they were gambles. And we tried really to simulate what mitigation means. So the mitigating option was meant to decrease the probability of a collective loss that affected both what happened to themselves and also to another person to whom they were matched, or they could just decide to protect themselves, or they could do nothing. And again, doing nothing was an option that was really disadvantageous according to the standards financial theory tools that we use to study this situation. But again, many people chose this option of doing nothing because probably they were just attracted by the option of earning more money. And then, fortunately, about 20% of the people went for the mitigating option, which is the cooperative option. Most of the people went for just adapting, just for covering their losses, but not really helping other people. So I think that's also quite interesting. And yes, and in another research project, I also want to answer the question as to whether being more exposed to climate change, to climate disasters, increases or decreases social cohesion. But I still haven't started analyzing the data in detail.
Ooh, that would be interesting. I can't wait for the results of that one to come out. That is fascinating. Now, have you done those experiments in other communities outside of PNG?
Not yet. We could think of doing something in Europe, just to have a comparison. But I'm pretty sure that we would observe very different results because, this type, probably not exactly this type of financial choices were made in the past, but very similar financial choices were, what I mean by financial choice is an experimental choice involving uncertainty. So they were made in the past in Western countries, and I can easily predict that in exactly the same type of situation in which 70% of people from Bougainville go for the risky option, close to 0 in Western countries would go for that option. So I think there is something really that has to do with, I would say, culture and with the fatalism and with the having this feeling of the future being already written, but also with I think over optimism. So I think that's another psychological trait that is with us. So it's undeniable that most of the people are over optimistic, are overconfident. That comes up pretty much in every research that we do. And I think it could be that people in Bougainville and more generally people in low-income countries are particularly overconfident, which sounds paradoxical, but actually it's not. Actually, something similar also comes up in the United States. So there is a very interesting data set put together by Chetty. And what he finds is that the degree to which Afro-American people believe that they can climb up the economic ladder, taking into account controlling for their actual initial position, is actually higher than what people from a Caucasian background believe. So in a way, people from Afro-American background are more over-optimistic than people from a Caucasian ethnic background. Again, taking into account their initial condition. So I think, if you are in a situation in which you really struggle to, make a living, then you must have this dream that the future will be good with you. So you must really have the illusion, which is actually really an illusion because it's not true, but you must have the illusion that you'll be lucky, that the system will give you opportunities to get ahead. And that's part of our psychology.
But there's a tension in that research, in that you said that 80% of them were fatalistic and felt that there was nothing that they could do about climate change. And yet the vast majority of them want to take a gamble. I mean, surely if you feel that there's nothing that you can do, then insurance would be the only rational follow-up action to take. So what happens there between feeling fatalistic and then suddenly jumping to over-optimistic and taking a gamble?
Yes, I mean, this is partly what I would like to do in my next fieldwork in Bougainville and in Papua, to understand better really what goes on in their beliefs about the future. But you can be fatalistic and over optimistic at the same time. So you can think that God will be good with you, the spirit will be good with you, and we already have I don't want to use the solution against climate change, because I've seen your article criticize the solution. But let's say they can believe that God will be good with them and there will be no climate disasters. So they still believe that the future is not in their hands, but they believe that God will be good with them. Maybe not at the community level, but at the individual level. So they might think, maybe climate disasters will come, but I will not be affected. Or they can think God will be good with us. And if God will not be good with us, then it means that we deserved it.
You know what this reminds me of? That exact sort of loop train of thought. Because it sounds like a kind of a self-disempowerment, right? There's nothing that I can do, but maybe we will be saved by some kind of greater power, by this system, by something. And it reminds me a lot of the talk that I hear amongst the richest in the world, the millionaire class, who say, oh, but there's really nothing that I can do. We're totally screwed. It's going to happen. The actions that they take might be, if you're really, really rich, you might go and build a bunker in New Zealand. But there is this total belief in their incapacity to change things. And yet simultaneously a hope that, but maybe it won't break down. I'll keep making my investments and I'll keep doing the things that are really, really harmful on the off chance that something from up on high is going to sort this out just in time.
Yeah, I mean, what you say is you're absolutely right. And I would love to do some research with the super rich. I don't think I will manage. This really fascinates me. So I still don't know whether the super rich are just insensitive. Actually, I have started delving into this, but I don't have really a full view of the literature on that. But there is somebody who says that the degree to which psychopaths are among the economic leaders and political leaders is above the average. So, about 100% of the people, actually more than 100%, I think 1.2% of men and about 0.7% of women are psychopaths. And that the personality trait associated with the psychopathy is being completely insensitive. So lack of empathy, lack of remorse, lack of guilt, being manipulative, lying, and never admit one's fault. And so I think, there are some psychopaths among the super rich. As I said, probably there is an overrepresentation of psychopaths among the super rich, so they just don't care. So they just say, okay, I got here because I deserved. Of course, the narcissism is also a big component of a psychopathy. So I deserve where I am, so I don't care about what is going to happen for future generations. But I think quite a lot of them are also over-optimistic. So they are basically techno-optimists, so they think that sooner or later something will come about. And I think this also implicitly, I mean, again, I don't know what goes on inside also the minds of super rich or the decisions of CEOs of energy companies. But I think there is also, in a way, a more or less, I don't want to say rational, but an extreme strategy now to push as much as possible now on fossil fuels, because I think they realize that sooner or later the policymakers will do something about it. So they are trying to push as much as possible now that they don't have the fig leaf of the carbon offsetting, in order to basically force us to engage with the geoengineering in the future. And so I think many people are techno-optimists on pretty much on no grounds, on no factual grounds, but they believe that yes, sooner or later technology will come to their rescue.
I agree with you on we're sort of being pushed even further into disaster. I sort of see it as the world being like a village, and we're being pillaged essentially by some neighboring tribe in the last few moments. The place is sort of being ransacked. And I meet policymakers that are very techno-optimistic. And obviously, please, everybody knows this listening, but I just want to make it really clear. I am not a scientist, and this is not data that I've collected. This is anecdotal evidence. So I meet policymakers that are techno-optimistic because they kind of have to be. But I have to say the vast majority of the super rich that I speak to, sort of in passing at conferences, are deeply fatalistic and are essentially trying to surf the wave as long as possible. And are hoping that collapse just won't come in their lifetimes. And the ones that have children are trying to think about how to build things in a way such that they can protect their own kids. And when you confront them with this sense of like, yeah, but what if you took the changes necessary to save not only your kids, but like everybody's kids? That, oh no, I can't do that. I don't have the power to do that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is very sad. And yeah, in a way, it doesn't surprise me entirely. Yeah, there has been a study that was very interesting, in which, again, they have tried experimentally to study how much people are concerned about the future generations in general with this type of experimental choices that I like. And this is a paper by Jennifer Jacquet from New York University and others, Manfred Milinski and many others. And basically they found that the concern for future generation is zero. So when they had the experimental treatment, the experimental conditioning, which people could care about the future generation, basically nobody did it. And yeah, that is very disconcerting. And we have to, as I said before, I mean, sometimes I believe in what George Monbiot says. So George Monbiot says that we as a humanity are humanistic, altruistic people, and that we are led by psychopaths. And of course, this is very extreme. It's not true to in general terms. And I also don't believe that we are all altruistic. There are many people who are just purely selfish. But overall, and this is also what I discovered in my travels, I would say that by a factor of 99.9%, the degree of people who were prepared to help me on the way, so the amount of altruistic people who I met on my travels, by far overwhelms the number of people who took advantage of me. And so I think that, if the bargains, if the negotiations at the COP that are held every year were held by common people rather than by our political representatives, things would go much better than what they are now. But
I agree.
That's also part of the problem. We are in this system in which the democratic representativeness only get to a point. And I believe I want to say I trust humanity, and I think that we have not really given humanity the possibility really of engaging seriously on this global climate problem. So really the first step would really to increase awareness all around the world about the underlying reasons of climate disasters.
It's so easy to get stuck in a silo, isn't it? I sometimes forget, right, that not everybody knows everything that I know, because everybody I know on my Twitter feed or everybody that I speak to, these are the kinds of conversations that we're having all the time. But for 1/3 of the population globally to think that climate change is man-made, and the other 2/3, it does show what we're up against, and it does give credence as well to the continuing statement that part of this is an education problem. Now, obviously, you could have 100% of the world educated, but with the powers of hierarchy and corruption so ingrained, you can have people out on the streets protesting and nothing change, essentially, because our systems of power become so concentrated amongst a few. But nonetheless, I think if we are going to mitigate, adapt, and transition through the increasing turbulence that is on the horizon, then we will need communities to have a sort of local, regional, national knowledge about what to do themselves. And part of that, of course, is like facing the first step of admitting what the problem is. You made me think of Alcoholics Anonymous, actually, when you were like, we have an addiction, and the first step that we need to take is recognizing that addiction, and only then we can act. I want to get onto your story, because part of the thing that you've done as a researcher to combat that addiction is to be a slow traveler for years now, and to not fly unless strictly necessary. And in the last piece of research that you did, you got to Papua New Guinea from Germany with slow travel. And then your employer wrote to you saying that you had, 5 days to get back to Germany from Papua New Guinea. And you said no, that you wanted to do it through slow traveling, and gave them a whole, possibility of a smorgasbord of options that would have been amenable. And you got fired for not wanting to fly in 2023. Can you walk us through that story?
Yes. So I must say that my institute, the ex-institute I work with, had been very, in a way, kind to me in accepting my slow travel. I've been slow traveling for more than 10 years, and they had always accepted my request to get to fieldwork and to conferences abroad, not catching planes, and that they counted the days of travel as days of work, which was great to me. And even for this fieldwork, they allowed me 5 weeks in the inbound travel, in the outbound travel, and 7 weeks in the outbound travel for slow travel. But what happened was that my fieldwork got delayed. I had, I think, some very serious reasons to have my work delayed. So I suffered armed robberies. There was volcano activities at one point, and there were just logistical problems that delayed the research. And so in the end, I was still in Bougainville on the day where I was supposed to be back in Germany. And I had informed about these delays my supervisor, my head of department, but I had failed to inform the president of my institute, and apparently this was a major procedural mistake for them. And so after realizing that I was late, they told me, okay, we cannot afford any further delay from you, so you have to be back in 5 days. And I mean, you can see that they have a point in willing one of their employees to go back as soon as possible. But still, I decided not to do that because there was really nothing that I had to do in Germany. So I have no teaching. There is no, meeting that I have to attend in person. So everything can be done online. So I think their request was pointless. And the way I perceived it is basically an act of submission. So I think they wanted me to really obey their order. And I think they wanted to diminish my public image as a climate activist. And, it's not necessarily what I think, but many people think that the real reason why the Institute took this stance against me was my previous involvement with the civil disobedience. And it's true that I was already threatened. I had already been threatened with a dismissal the year before, after I had taken part in some civil disobedience demonstrations, in particular in Germany. And so at that point, they told me that they would not tolerate my further involvement with the civil disobedience. They tolerate protests, but only within the boundary of the law. And of course, the essential point of civil disobedience is that you go beyond the law. So you breach the law precisely because you want to show that the situation is so serious, is so bad that you have to do something to show that, as again, Antonio Guterres says, the real criminals are not doing this minor infringement of the law, but are those who are continuing with burning fossil fuels. So I thought that was the main reason why, or at least that could have been part of the reason why they took this strong stance against me. And I said, no, I don't want to lose my dignity in the end. I don't want to bend myself to this act of submission. I disobey. So that was the first reason. The second reason is that I had already promised to every participant in my research that I would have done whatever possible to alleviate their suffering. As we said before, all people in Bougainville are already experiencing the effects of climate change. And I had promised them that I would do whatever I could do to alleviate their suffering. And I didn't want to renege on my promise. So I had promised that I'm going to go back not catching a plane, because that's the only tangible way that I can show you my support for you. And, traveling low carbon, I still emitted about 500 kilograms of CO2, but that's 10 times less than what I would have emitted by flying, at least according to my computations. So by flying, I would have emitted 5 tons of CO2. And I really wanted to stick with my promise, also because, of the colonial past. So the Australians who colonized Papua New Guinea until 1975 were rather heavy-handed. So they would put local people who did not comply with their laws in jail. I still hear stories of basically apartheid that was implemented in PNG, of really completely unnecessary submission of local people. So, there is a lot of diffidence against the Western people. And so I really wanted to not to appear as a Giaman. So Giaman in local language is the word that basically defines liars and fraudsters. So I didn't want to be a Giaman. I really wanted to be consequential to the promise I made. And finally, I thought this was, again, part of my activism. So normally, when we do our actions, we strive to have maybe one journalist following the action that you put in place. And I must say that I didn't expect that my story would become so popular. I had asked many friends and also some journalists what kind of impact my refusal to go back by plane would have triggered. And no one, not one single person told me, go for it. Everybody told me either no one will pay attention to your story. It will be forgotten in a matter of days. And even colleagues from Scientist Rebellion would tell me, you cannot lose your job, because that is also what enables you to go ahead with civil disobedience and with activism. So hold on to your job, take the plane, and then you can do all the campaigns that you like. And then I thought, maybe precisely for that reason, that nobody really seems to see the reason for this choice, then I should really do it. But I mean, knowing myself, I knew that I would have never accepted it. Also because exactly in those days, I had found out that it was really feasible to travel all the way from Bougainville to Germany, no fly. That was something that was not easy at all, because getting out of Bougainville was the most difficult thing of all, because there are no freighters, there are no passenger services. So I really had to beg with many owners of private ships that if they let me on board. And in the end, on that very day, I found one person who told me, okay, we can try. We have to ask authorization from the National Maritime Authority. But yeah, if they give authorization, then you can travel with me. So I was really so excited to do something, of course, purely symbolic. Some people pointed out that these 5 tons is the equivalent of what China emits in 1 millisecond. So in a way, it's a symbolic action. But I thought, well, symbols matter. Purely symbolic actions matter. And I thought, maybe, this again, part of my activism. So maybe some people will listen to me. And I think now I can say that I've been vindicated, because I've really had dozens of journalists who told my story. I'm writing a book now. I'm speaking with you. So I was really able to launch the alarm with the strongest voice I could, and I thought now I can say that really it made absolute sense to lose my job to really sound the alarm with the strongest possible voice I could.
And how has Klein Institute responded to this, essentially? Have you had any contact with them? Have they had any sort of kickback for their decision?
No, they always refuse to speak with me. And I must say that there is a legal case still ongoing. So I was unsuccessful in the first degree, but at least the judge recognized that the Kiel Institute was not entitled to dismiss me with the immediate notice. So at least he proposed a kind of settlement according to which I would have been at least allowed for 2 months of salary. So in a way, he saw that the action by the institute was not entirely justifiable in legal terms. But then when it came to accepting the possibility that one would take 5 weeks in order to go back to slow travel, to travel low carbon, he explicitly said that was not acceptable. So he said, if your employer asks you to be back in a reasonable amount of time, you cannot take 5 weeks. I think in Germany, somebody refers to this as the kind of sanctity, the holiness of the workplace. So your employer can really decide on the workplace you are going to work in purely discretionary terms, and that there is nothing that you can do about that. So those were the reasons. But now I'm going to I'm going to appeal. So there is going to be a second degree, and I found a lawyer who is going to defend me for free. Fortunately, I would still have to pay the legal expenses if the appeal is unsuccessful. But this time we really want to focus much more on the conscience, on the conscientious objection to doing something that goes against your morality. And also the recent sentence by the European Court on Human Rights could be a good signal. So it has approved the appeal by this group of Swiss pensioners, saying that the Swiss government has not done enough to prevent or adapt to climate change. So yes, maybe the legislation is changing, and we have to try to push the boundaries. But I received no basically factual comments from the institute. Of course, they never said why it was so urgent that I should be in Kiel on the 2nd of October, because there was no reason. So they know very, very well that there is no reason. And I would say, probably I shouldn't do that because it's not good for my legal case. But they have been at a purely human level. I cannot find any other word than, okay, if I want to, let's say, put it in a nice way, childish. Because they just tried to do things to me that are really childish. So, for instance, in principle, I should be entitled to receive an unemployment subsidy. I have not received any unemployment subsidy since January. And I think the main reason why is that they are not sending the labor agency information concerning my salary. This is at least what I received. I received a letter from the labor agency, that is the department of the administration that deals with unemployment subsidy. So they said that the institute had not sent all the information they need to determine my unemployment subsidy. So I don't know whether they made a mistake or whether they did it on purpose. They should reimburse me at least 12,000 euros of research money that I have advanced, and they have not paid me back. And even, they even had the, I don't know, I'm really struggling for words, the audacity, I would say ironically, to say that I had misused the research money. They wrote to the judge that they had received no proof that I had actually worked for them, and they hinted to the judge. Yes. So this is what they wrote to in their declaration to the judge. So they said that they had received no evidence that I had actually worked when I was there. And they said that they pointed out that I had received 45,000 euros for this research project, and that if they had found evidence that I had basically embezzled this money, they would take a legal action against me. So basically, they sort of implied that I had stolen this money. So this is what they wrote. I can show you the documents. And now they are not, of course, when I was there, I did nothing else than working. Actually, I spent 10,000 euros more than what was the original budget, because after a while, I lost track of how much I was spending, and I decided to stay there longer. 4,000 euros was stolen by robbers and my assistants. So I lost money doing this research, and they wrote to the judge that I was kind of pocketing this money, and now they are not paying me back.
Astonishing.
Yes, really astonishing. So, I mean, if I were them, I would have at least thanked me for, I think, the loyal work that I have done for them for the last 10 years. I would have said, well, Gianluca, we disagree on this matter, but we thank you for your work. So they never issued any statement of this type. They just said that they kept on, saying as a broken record that I was meant to be back in Kiel on the 2nd of October. I was not there, and therefore I had to be fired. And I must also say that I received close to zero solidarity from my colleagues. Two of them wrote me something, but no one of them wrote me something nice saying, we don't understand what is going on, but at least we are kind of with you. I've been also very disappointed by my head of area because he would not admit in front of the judge something that he always told me. He always told me that in his opinion, I could work from anywhere in the world, his words. He would always tell me, for me, I don't care whether you work in Kiel or in any other place in the world, as long as you do your work, it's okay, I don't care. And of course, the institute can say that it's not in the prerogative, it's not in the power of my line manager to tell me where I have to work. Again, the sanctity of the workplace stays with the president of the institute, so they could have overruled, but still, it's your line manager who tells you you don't need to be in Kiel, so that must have some value. But he would refuse to say that in front of the judge, and that was also a major disappointment at the human level for me, that basically he would not do close to anything to defend me.
Was there not also some story about Volkswagen and the chair in your department?
Yes, I mean, of course, this is all something that cannot be proven. I have no evidence for that. But the one action, the one protest that really attracted a lot of media attention in Germany was the occupation that I carried out with the scientist rebellion of the Porsche pavilion in the Volkswagen Automobile Museum in Wolfsburg. And so my position got a lot of media attention, partly because I was probably the most senior person, the most senior researcher in the group of people who occupied the Porsche pavilion, and also because of bad communication, bad social media usage, and also we were slightly unprepared to carry out an occupation for several days. So in the end, my position attracted a lot of media attention. I received about 50 basically hate emails of people saying, you are a researcher paid by public money, you should never got involved in this type of protests. And probably the directors of the institute received 10 times as many. And so I think they must have thought that I was a rather difficult researcher to have at their payroll. They thought that probably my involvement with civil disobedience would bring the institute in disrepute. They would lose reputation. And it has also to be said that Volkswagen, even if they don't directly fund the institute, they provide the money for the chair for the professorship of the director of basically the environmental economics department at the institute. So they fund 6 years of professorship, and that is a fact. So I cannot prove any involvement of Volkswagen in my situation. But I think as a researcher, I must respect what my colleagues do. But I must say that one of the reasons why the departmental this department at the institute receives a lot of money is that they deal with the geoengineering, and they try to see the public opinion with respect to geoengineering, which is, I think, an acceptable thing to do. But some of their work is, I would say, rather extreme in their conclusions. So, for instance, some of the works implies that the optimal temperature increase, so the optimal level of temperature increase is 3.8 degrees, which I think most climate scientists would think that, I mean, we are bordering extinction. So I don't know what integrated assessment model they are using to make these statements. But for sure, they are grossly underestimating the costs of climate disasters. I don't know, but I mean, these are the type of things that they would say. I heard it with my ears, otherwise I wouldn't believe it. But they said that when Jonathan Stern, actually the author of the Stern report, came to Kiel for a public lecture. So yes, this is the type of work that the environmental department does at the Kiel Institute.
What a piece of evidence, I would say. Very revealing. Listen, Gianluca, we have run out of time, unfortunately, but I want to thank you for your bravery. Thank you for taking a stand. I think your story is incredible. I look forward to reading the book, and I think that these actions that we can take that then also are proof of the capacity of a community to rally around us when we do the right thing. These are the kinds of stories that we need more of at this time, because fundamentally these are the only actions that we can take. And it is these sort of moments of throwing rocks against Goliath that show us and remind us how to disempower the elite that we were talking about right at the beginning of this conversation. So thank you for doing the right thing in that situation.
Yes, thank you, Raquel. I think, I just did the right thing. Although, of course, everybody has their own system of what is right and what is wrong. Honestly, I don't think I've done anything special. I think I really did what was the consequential thing that I had to do. I think, I mean, somebody says that I'm a hero, but really I'm no hero. So the real heroes are Iranian women who go around without their veil. Also, I think we should keep things in proportion. The real heroes are the environmental activists who risk their life, and they die in the thousands in the Philippines, in South America, because they oppose the exploitation of their land. I did something from a privileged position, from a situation in which I have found, in any case, a safety net mainly given by all nice friends and people I've met on the road. So yes, I've done the right thing, but I hope that in a way many more people will maybe find the bravery to do something similar. But yeah, it's very difficult, and I'm just very, very happy if my story can inspire more people to take a stance and to disobey their authorities when their authorities are demanding something that is immoral.
Thank you very much. My final question for you is, who would you like to platform?
Yes, I would like to invite Alex Foti, F-O-T-I. He's a very good friend of mine who has had the bravery, I would say, of organizing the World Climate Congress in Milan last year. And his idea was to bring together as many as possible climate movements, climate realities from many different parts of the world, and try to get them to write, to subscribe to a common agenda. Of course, it's very difficult. I think there is not one movement. There are many movements, many climate movements, and probably they are overly fragmented. And I think we should really strive to really find a common ground and find the conditions according to which we can really move together, rather than, I do an action this week, you do an action another week. Otherwise, our voice is really, really dispersed. So he was the main driver behind this Congress, with, of course, many other people. So I think I would really be glad if he could be your guest in the future.
Thank you so much. I very much look forward to interviewing him. Gianluca, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Raquel. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
If you want to learn more, I've put links to everything in the description box below. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and share the episode if you enjoyed it. To support the show, subscribe at planetcritical.com, where you can read the weekly newsletter inspired by each interview. You can also become a Planet Critical patron. All links are in the description box below. As always, my deepest thanks to that community. Planet Critical wouldn't exist without your support. Thank you everyone for listening and for coming on this journey together.